Hello everyone, welcome back to MCFC Connect. Today we're going to be talking about James Trafford, a new goalkeeper that we signed for £31 million from Burnley, who's just had a great season in the Championship. And yeah, he's our new number one goalkeeper in terms of number, and more than likely our long-term replacement for Edison. But in this video, we're going to be talking about James Trafford. What does he bring that is maybe slightly different to Edison, or maybe entirely different overall, and maybe parts of his game that he is missing compared to a goalkeeper like Edison? We're going to talk about it all. We're going to talk about where he fits in the team and everything that goes. Now then, let's start with some stats that you have seen before. FootMob stats. These guys are my guys. I really do rate FootMob and their stats. These are specifically his championship stats, but I've spoken about all this before in terms of his brilliant save percentage. 84% shots saved, 88 saves overall. Only conceded 16 goals in the league. Really, really, really good stuff. It's an incredible record. 16 goals in 45 games. No doubt his defence played a part in that as well, but you can't take it away from James Trafford. He played absolutely brilliantly. In terms of goals prevented, 12. No errors led to goals, so any goals that did go in weren't really on him. It's not like he had like a howler. We see that a lot. Last season with Edison, we saw it a few times, and even Ortega had one or two. Penalty saves, he has a really good record overall. Last season it was 100% in the Championship, 2 in the same game against Sunderland, who were their promotion challengers. A good amount of high claims and even a good amount of sweeper-keeper moments, which obviously City are a fan of. So again, all good stuff here. Penalties faced 2. Probably this is orange here, but 2 penalties I don't think is awful in a 45-game season, to be fair. And the fact that he went on to save them as well makes it all brilliant. I don't know how any of this is orange, to be honest. For me, this all looks brilliant. Now then, onto his distribution with a 70% passing accuracy. Again, at City, that's going to go up because the goalkeeper is very much more involved when it comes to passing at Man City. Edison, sometimes you'll just see him knocking it around the back four, almost a part of that back line. And then eventually he'll hoof it up long to try and find Haaland, maybe he'll try and find a winger. So you could very well expect that from Trafford. So this will go up, no doubt. Okay, it goes up for every player when they join City. And accurate long balls, 209, very solid. I think that's actually more than Edison last season, who had about 154. That's not to take away from Edison, obviously, because Edison did actually have a higher accuracy than Trafford and also had more assists. Not that goalkeepers and assists are everything, but those assists are always nice to watch. The one that comes to mind for me for last season would have been Marmoush versus Newcastle where he lobs the goalkeeper. Now, he had 8 yellow cards. For a goalkeeper, you'd want a little less. That can mainly come down to time wasting, though. Back end of the game, Burnley were very tight in terms of their wins. Sometimes, a lot of times it would just be by the one goal. Look at these 3 wins in a row of just winning by 1 goal, and even these 2 by 1 goal. Sure, they have some landslides sometimes, and some some fairly easy ones too, 3-1. But sometimes it can be tight, and so sometimes he does probably get booked. Like, look at this one against Watford. Probably time wasting in that led to that one as well. So, to be fair, yellow cards, you can look at that way. But the main thing here with Trafford is his brilliant save ratio, which when you look at Edison, his save ratio is not great, to say the least. He's never been a superb shot stopper, but it's safe to say that last season was a very hard watch for Edison in terms of shot stopping. A lot got past him. And he overall made a good few errors too. The Feyenoord game was awful to my memory. He made some howlers that game. But overall, just not the best season for Eddie. He's definitely been on the decline since the 23-24 season, which is partly the reason why we've invested in a goalkeeper. We need a long-term goalkeeper, in my opinion. It's partly why I like Trafford. He's 22 years old. He'll be 23 in October. That's a similar age to when Edison joined us. He's got a lot of experience in England, not so much on the European stage. I don't think he's got any, apart from, I guess, playing for England. But again, he's trying to get the words. He's a very young goalie, and he's got a very long future ahead of him. Edison and Ortega both didn't have their best season last season, so it only makes sense to try and bring in someone to help out in that area. Ortega is now expected to leave, and Trafford is actually expected, despite having the number 1 shirt, to become the number 2, but I'll touch on that a little bit more soon. You can see previous clubs here, he's played a lot of football in England, 74 games for Bolton and 73 for Burnley. That's coming on for 150, not even including his Accrington Stanley stuff. And now he's back with City to try and do the brilliant stuff he did in the Championship last season. Hopefully that will translate somewhat well into the Premier League. I don't expect the exact same record, but man, if he could have stats like this, not even like, I expect him to concede more than 16. It's the Premier League. It's a lot of a tougher league. But this is even assuming he's the number 1, by the way. But if he is the number 1 and he concedes and he's just got good stats like not the errors leading to goals, penalties being saved, a high ratio in terms of saves, for me, that is the main thing I can ask for from Trafford. Now then, though, let's move on to FootMob, a place I also do use a lot. Now, mainly for this one, we're here to talk about the strengths, and again, these strengths, very much stuff we talked about: concentration, saving close range shots, penalty savings, and his shot stopping reflexes. All good stuff, again, in my opinion. Shot stopping does seem to be a big strength for James Trafford. Discipline, again, for me, this is something I've talked about a lot. It's something that can get trained out of him, for me. It's definitely something that can get trained out of him. But again, all good stuff. Shot stopping seems to be a real big strength for James Trafford, as opposed to distribution. Distribution is something he is solid at, but it does seem like shot stopping is something he is very, very good at. Now then, let's go over to a lineup which doesn't have Trafford in. Okay, this is like my first team 11 going into the next season. Now then, it's not like 100% accurate. Like, I would like to have Shirky in here. There are other players that could easily fit in here. Nunez, I don't want to be my permanent right back, so don't take this lineup to heart, is basically what I'm trying to say. But the main place to look is Edison, who currently is in my team. This is personally, I think Edison will be the number 1 goalkeeper going into next season, and whether you like that or not, Trafford is still going to get a lot of games, okay? Because look at it like this. Edison in the Premier League last season only played 26 games. Was that because he went out of favour? No, it's because he picked up injuries. And the season before that, you'll remember, he also picked up a fair amount of injuries, and Ortega got a good amount of football. The same will more than likely apply this season with Trafford, unless Edison does pick it up in terms of lack of injuries. If he lacks injuries, and that's great stuff for me. But 2 season trot, you would expect a 3rd season. Having a great option who will get a lot of football in cup games, okay, but will also get a solid amount of Premier League football. 12 games in the Premier League, that is about a third of the games available. So you picture that for Trafford, you're gonna get all the Carabao Cup games, you're gonna get all the FA Cup games, you're gonna get about probably 10 Premier League games, and you may even get 1 or 2 Champions League games. Suddenly you're looking at about a 30 to 35 game season for Trafford, potentially, assuming we go all the way in all those competitions. And suddenly that is a real nice thing for Trafford, and he's assumed to become our number 1 goalkeeper this season, as Edison is expected to leave. For me, that's actually a really good thing. Okay, a season for Trafford to get used to his surroundings, to get used to the physicality of the Premier League and playing at a top team at Man City. And then the following season, when he's got all that experience under his belt, he then goes and takes that and becomes a great goalkeeper, hopefully. That's the dream idea. But we'll have to wait and see. James Trafford will eventually become our number 1 goalkeeper, to to my hope. I'd be surprised if he doesn't. And this is what the 11 will eventually look like. And for all I know, maybe he is going to be the outright number one goalkeeper. Maybe he just will be. But we will have to wait and see. Now, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got a better idea of James Trafford and where his place is going to be in the team. I really like the look of James Trafford. He just had a brilliant season with Burnley in the Championship. I know it's the Championship. It's not a guarantee it's going to translate to the Premier League. But nothing wrong with hoping for the best of James Trafford, because I think he looks absolutely top from what I've seen. Not going to act like I watched him every week, but I've watched a fair amount of highlights now, and I do quite like the look of him. He's obviously a goalkeeper City are a big fan of, because, look, guys, how many times does City bring a player back to the club? Okay, especially an academy player. There's Ilkay Gundogan. He's not an academy player, but he is a player we brought back. And there's James Trafford. I can't think of many others. Let me know what you think in the comments down below, Blues. Do you think this is a good signing? Do you see what James Trafford brings to the team? The main thing he's bringing, in my opinion, is high potential for a future spot, and also really good shot stopping by the looks of it, something Edison definitely lacks. But look, Blues, make sure to leave your comments down below. If you did like this video, then make sure to leave a like on the video for more. Subscribe to the channel, and also turn on the notification bell so you don't miss the next one. I'll see you all in the next one, Blues.